In a moment, reporter Linda Moulton Howe joins us with a story that is just so strange, so important. We are devoting at least two-thirds of her night tonight to try to unravel this story about the strange sound, this hum, that people apparently are hearing all around the planet. Linda's next on Coast to Coast AM. And investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe with us, Earth Changes Media. Now, that's Mitch Batris. She's earthfiles.com. Linda, it was good seeing you at the Conscious Life Expo a few weeks ago.
It really was. It was fun. That luncheon for Barbara Marks Hubbard was so lovely. She's a hero in my eyes, and I just enjoyed the whole conference and seeing you, and you were a host at that lunch, and it was one of those conferences where on the first night, Ancient Aliens, we had about 1,000 people in the audience.
Yeah, it was huge. The whole event went very well. And, we started getting phone calls several months ago on a regular basis about this story you've investigated.
Right.
This has got to be one of the strangest stories I have ever heard about.
Same here. And to help people understand, there are the Taos hums, the Bristol hums, the Detroit hums, all of those things I've reported over the past. This is quite different. We're talking about maybe now 50-some YouTube videos circulating from many places in North America.
All over the place, yeah.
And from different countries around the world. And these strange sounds have been recorded over the past year since at least March 2011, but no one was paying any attention until January of 2012 when someone started doing montages, gathering up from the previous months. And some strange sounds are described by listeners like trumpets or horns, almost musical in quality, quite different from the hums or the buzzes or the booms that we've also talked about the last few years. Other sounds are compared, believe it or not, and you will hear them tonight, to an old TV playing loudly with voices, but words can't be understood. And then there are very loud insect-like buzzing sounds that just suddenly come, or low beats like drums, or droning white noise like a freeway, but where there is no freeway. Those that have experienced the strange sounds say that the first thing they do is look up, but what they are hearing surrounds them without a specific source point. Most recently, in February 2012, a dozen new videos were added at YouTube that include an eerie sound from Dunkirk, New York, posted on February 16th, and it starts off as white noise and becomes horn-like. And I would like to recommend to Coast viewers or listeners and Earth Files viewers that you go to my Earth Files report that's quite extensive tonight, and I have the links to the full length of all the sounds that we're talking about over the next 2 or 3 half hours. But right now, I'm going to start this segment with an excerpt from that Dunkirk, New York sound now.
The month before in Germany, a horn-like sound set off car alarms and was recorded and uploaded to YouTube on January 20th, 2012. One of the comments about the Germany video was posted from a Maryland couple who wrote, quote, "My wife and I heard nearly identical sounds to the German video, clearly emanating from the sky on January 22nd and 23rd in Maryland, just 23 miles from the White House. It was loud and extremely disconcerting. We were so stunned we did not even think to pull out our iPhones to record it. That sound was the weirdest thing I have ever heard in my 50-plus years of life," close quote. Recently, northeast of Nashville in Gallatin and southeast of Memphis in Olive Branch, Mississippi, on January 18th and January 19th, 2012, two different residents were shocked to hear all around them what each has compared to trumpets or horns that were eerie, even frightening. The first experience was Wednesday, January 18, 2012. 63-year-old Cindy Smith, a retired real estate agent, has lived in Gallatin, Tennessee, 35 miles northeast of downtown Nashville, in the same house for 27 years. It was 12:30 p.m., and Cindy was packing her car to visit her daughter's home to dog sit while her daughter was in Chicago for work. Cindy had walked from the house to put boxes in her car when she was stopped in her tracks by a sound she had never heard before. What follows is an excerpt from a videotape sound around 5 p.m. on August 11, 2011, from the fifth-floor balcony of an apartment building in Kiev, Ukraine. Cindy Smith picked the following Kiev, Ukraine sound out of a montage of videos as the closest to what she heard in her Gallatin, Tennessee home only a month ago at 12:30 p.m. on January 18th.
I know this is going to sound strange. My first thought was trumpets of revelation. I have to say it was frightening. And I have never heard any other sound like it in my life, never. It was just so encompassing. It was just so loud. And I thought, oh, no, it's not that. It has to be maybe my next-door neighbor had turned up his speakers too loud in his house. And that must be it. And so I just finished what I was doing, ran back in the house, and looked back to see if there were any cars in the driveway at his house. And there were no cars there, so no one was home. So I was really puzzled about that. And the noise had stopped. It had gone on for about maybe a half a minute. I remembered later on, after I got to my daughter's house, that I had heard a report about some strange noise in Costa Rica. So I thought, well, I'm going to get on YouTube here and see if I can find something similar to what I heard. And the one in particular that I really thought was accurate was the one in Kiev, and it's dated August 11th. So evidently these sounds have been going on for some time. It was so unusual, and it was frightening. It just went to your core. I mean, it was just like nothing I've ever heard. It did sort of sound like trumpets. It had a very odd, almost a metallic sound to it. It had almost like a groaning sound in a way, but yet there was like a musical quality to it, like a horn being blown. People have recorded it, and I realized that there was a mystery here, and I would love to know what it is.
And when you felt fear, what was in your mind?
Maybe it's a warning. Maybe something big is going to happen. You know, maybe it's something to get our attention.
After Cindy Smith's experience, 15 hours later, beginning at 3:45 a.m. Central, for about 5 minutes, more trumpet sounds were heard by 45-year-old William Wilson Smith, a newspaper delivery man for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. Will has been delivering papers to stores since September 2011. He also has worked as an audio engineer for musical groups and is sensitive to frequencies and audio dynamics. It was early morning Thursday, January 19th, on his regular route in Olive Branch, Mississippi, a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee, that he was astonished by horn-like sounds suddenly surrounding him in every direction.
Sounded like a chorus of trumpets, a chord of 6 or 7 frequencies maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It started up, it seemed fairly loud, but it seemed like it was all around me, not like it was coming from any certain direction. It started up and it lasted, a few seconds, probably 30 seconds, and kind of faded out. And then within a couple seconds, it started back up, and it stayed pretty steady, 3, 4, or 5 minutes. And every now and then it would fade out for a few seconds and come back.
During those 5 minutes, were you aware of anything in your environment that changed?
Yes. For me, it was almost like electricity in the air. I could feel my hair standing up. I know it was a very eerie feeling. There was a flock of starlings common around here this time of year. They making a little racket as starlings do, and they quieted down during this and stayed quiet after it ended for a little while. And also there was just a little bit of traffic that time of the morning. Car was passing by, and they slowed down and rolled down their window, and it came to a stop in the middle of the street for a few seconds and then drove on.
What is your perception of where the sound was coming from?
It seemed to be coming from all around me. No matter which way I turned, it had the same intensity.
Did you have any sense that you were hearing more of the chorus of trumpets from above?
Definitely. The sound was coming from every direction. The first direction I looked was up. I'm a very analytical person, and, in retrospect, originally, the mind says, ooh, train, but I'm looking up, and this seemed to be all around me, above me, feel the vibration. I don't think it was super loud, but the sound was everywhere.
Now, why wouldn't that be loud?
Well, speaking as an ex-sound man, it had body, but not a lot of volume. The dynamic of it, I would say it was probably maybe 100 decibels. Human beings speak at around 70 to 80 decibels in a normal tone of voice. Train horn is probably 120 decibels if you're right next to the railroad tracks. I'd say it was definitely loud enough that when the sound ended, you had that echo or that fading of the sound as the sound traveled away. This was several frequencies, a very low frequency, which kind of moved in and out of it, and the mid-range frequencies seemed to be predominant. They held the longest with the least amount of breaks. If you were to take, say, a tuba, something that would operate on that low of a band, and add it to maybe a couple train horns that are the different frequencies, it's hard to describe. This was a 30-second blast and then a 3 to 5 minute blast. Definitely not a train.
Could this sound have been directed at you specifically?
I hope not.
What have you thought about could have been the source?
A lot of things. Seismic activity, because we're in an area that they keep telling us have another major earthquake. Also, perhaps supernatural ideas have gone through my head about it. Maybe a veil between dimensions or universes is opening up. With the way things are going, you just can't help but think, could it be Gabriel's horn? It's confusing to me right now because it really blew my mind.
Only a tiny minority are hearing them.
Maybe it's a warning.
What is the reason?
I truly believe that we are on the verge of some sort of new version of humanity.
Now, George, he was in Olive Branch, Mississippi, a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee, and that was at 3:45 in the morning on January 19th, 15 hours earlier, in Gallatin near Nashville, about 3 hours away by car. Cindy Smith, loading up her car at 12:30, heard the same kind of trumpet sound. So that's the 18th and 19th of January. A couple of days ago, of maybe 200, 300, 400 emails that I've gotten from people who have been hearing bizarre things.
Oh, they just keep rolling in, don't they?
I got an email from a man who is in Spring Hill, Tennessee. That's not too far from Gallatin, where Cindy Smith was. And this is what he writes. In mid-January, it could have been on January 18th. I also heard a strange noise around 4:15 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon that sounded like a very busy distant highway with a horn similar to a trumpet noise blowing at a constant, dull, continuous level which never fluctuated. I do not have the day definite, but I know it was around January 18th. I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee, that is 40 minutes south of Nashville and an hour away from Gallatin. I live near the Lexington Farm subdivision in Spring Hill, and this sound lasted for what seemed to be about an hour. It seemed like it was coming from all around me, but at a distance. Strangely, my dog, a puggle, was unfazed by the noise and did not seem to perk her ears to acknowledge anything was wrong, which struck me as extremely odd. And in the next half hour, at the end, I'm going to be addressing a possibility in some ways as bizarre as what we're talking about that might be part of this phenomena and might explain why people are hearing this in their heads, but other people and animals around them are not. But let's wait till the next half hour, because what I want to share is here. So here's a man on the same time period as Will Smith and Cindy Smith writes this, and it goes on. He's very detailed. I believe this man is describing absolutely something that just floored him for an entire hour as he tried to understand where the freeway combined with the horn sound was coming from. Now, also, a couple of days ago, I received this email. It is from a design engineer at a major car company in Warrendale, Pennsylvania. He enclosed all of his professional material. So as he said, I want you to know I am serious and I am a professional, and that he's absolutely amazed by what happened on the morning of February 21st. This morning, as soon as I walked outside, I noticed it was loud. I live within 20 miles of the Pittsburgh International Airport, so occasionally airliners will fly over the house.
That's right.
But this did not quite sound like a jet. It sounded like a mixture between something like a strange white noise highway, droning sound, and maybe a bit like the bustle of downtown. The problem is this was 6:20 a.m. in the morning. A lot of people are up and around, but I can tell you, I have lived at this address for over 3 years, and it is never loud, not even during rush hour or after a Steelers game for that matter. And I just wanted you to be aware, as a professional, there is something going on, close quote. And then the day before, I received this email from a woman in Victoria, Texas, and she begins, we are smack in the middle of San Antonio, Houston, Corpus Christi, and Austin. I was reading your eerie, strange sounds heard in Tennessee and Kansas at Earth Files and the update on February 9th. And what caught my eye were the accounts you mentioned of people hearing white noises like freeways. This made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. First of all, the town I live in has no freeways around us. But for the past 2 weeks, I have been hearing the sound of freeway traffic during the night, usually between the hours of 1 and 4 a.m. We have a newborn son who usually awakens during this time. I take turns with my partner in the nighttime feedings, and I noticed this strange sound approximately 2 weeks ago. It sounded like traffic on a freeway, and I thought to myself, we have no freeways. And if we did, there would be no way that there would be that much traffic going down the freeway at that time of night. I heard it as recently as this morning, which was February 20th at 3 a.m., and it lasted about 10 to 15 minutes on and off. Now, Whitley Strieber has also been aware a couple of times that out of the blue, where he lives in California, what he describes as a white noise freeway sound has unnerved him.
It's strange, Linda. I've been talking to Whitley about that as well. And next up, Linda talks with some people who, well, maybe they're not just hearing horns and trumpets. We'll be back. Linda, some even think this is biblical with the angels sounding trumpets. It's got all kinds of stuff going on, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and I'm going to have some comments about that. But I'd like to start this segment out with something that fascinates me, because in addition to the strange horn-like sounds and the freeway sort of sounds, there are buzzing sounds that suddenly fill the air like cicadas gone wild, but hugely loud. And one of those was recorded back on August 23rd, 2011, 6 months ago. The first unexpected news that day was around 5 a.m. when the U.S. Geological Service registered 7 earthquakes with epicenters about 7 miles southwest of Cokedale, Colorado. One was a 5.3 magnitude earthquake, and some people reported strange sounds before those quakes hit. A few hours later, after those Colorado earthquakes, across the United States to Virginia near Mineral, northwest of Richmond, the USGS registered a 5.8 earthquake at 2:04 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the earthquake that cracked the Washington Monument and caused the Pentagon and the Capitol to be evacuated. Well, in Virginia, not long before that East Coast quake, a father was videotaping his young daughter in their backyard when a weird and unexplained sound filled the air. Here now is that August 23rd, 2011 sound before the earthquake in Virginia.
Okay, beautiful people, we're back from our little trip today, and well, just came back a few hours ago, and just wanted to say hi.
I don't know.
Let's redo the video again.
Did something deep in the earth before the Virginia earthquake cause the loud, strange buzzing sound the father caught on his videotape because he was already taping his little daughter? It's likely there is a mixture of causes around the world, ranging from natural to industrial to military and other. But what about the horn-like sounds and strange voice-like sounds that don't make any understandable words? In English-speaking cultures, the angel Gabriel is associated with blowing a trumpet that starts the end of time and the resurrection at the Last Judgment. But the fact is, there is no specific historic reference to Gabriel blowing a trumpet in the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament. In the last New Testament chapter called Revelation, 7 unnamed angels each blow a trumpet to announce each new phase of earth destructions, and the 7th angel's trumpet is supposed to cause the dead to rise up to meet Jesus Christ. The association of an angel blowing trumpet sounds at the end of time is now entrenched in popular culture. Could a government or other agency deliberately try to manipulate worldwide humanity with deliberate deceptive productions of horn or trumpet sounds in order to provoke fear and worry about 2012, long associated with the end of the Mayan stone calendar and apocalyptic worries? As haunting as the horn-like sounds have been to listeners, others are as haunted and bewildered by sounds that are not musical. Some are like old, noisy TV sets, but the words aren't clear, including one in Norway, a videotape uploaded to YouTube on September 23rd, 2011. Here is that Norway sound now. One Kansas couple picked out the Norway video as the closest they could come to what sounded to them like a muffled TV set in the distance. The sound woke them up on September 3rd, 2011. Maura Dingman, the wife, sent me an email about their strange experience. Maura is 54 years old and has lived in the Topeka, Kansas region all her life. Her husband, Bud, is 64, and the couple have made a living selling properties and restoring houses. At the end of 2010, they purchased a summer house at Perry Lake that is about 30 miles northeast of their Topeka home. That's where they were Labor Day weekend on September 3rd, 2011, when Maura was first awakened around 3 a.m. by a very strange sound that went on for at least 15 minutes.
What I first was hearing, I thought, was the television on upstairs, and not just on, but like loud. Typically when I'm downstairs, I don't hear the television at all, actually. It's just never usually that loud. And so that was kind of weird, but I thought, did it come on its own? Thought, well, I got to get up. I got to look bugged up. But first I'm going to go up and see why the television is on. So I go upstairs, and I get up there. It's not that at all, and I'm baffled. After I discovered it wasn't TV, I went back downstairs because we have sliding doors out of the bedroom into a little fenced area for the dogs. And when I got outside, I heard it in a clearer way, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It was just strange, echoey. And when I say echoey, it just had kind of an everywhere quality to it. It made me think of the echo of a muffled television. I kept trying to tell myself, someone has a window open and there's a TV on, but gosh, it's loud. You know, in this setting, we all have at least a half acre of ground, the way the houses are situated. So my closest neighbor is up the hill a bit, and all the lights were out. I don't know what it was, except to say that it was strange. And so I stood out there for a good 10, 15 minutes trying to. It just really affected me because it was an odd sound. It was echoey, somewhat mechanical sounding, which television is. You just hear that quality, that, you know, electronic wah-wah type of a sound.
This was a sound that was changing the way voices would change if you were hearing a TV in a background.
I couldn't make anything out, you know, but yet I kept trying to think that it was voices. Just, you know, it sounded like television. And I know this is going to sound strange, but at the time I kept thinking like old television, like childhood television sounds. It haunted me because it was such a strange event. And to go on, you know, I stayed out, I listened, finally just went back in with the animals, and my husband was asleep. As it turns out, the next morning, I'm telling him about it. It's like, well, I heard that too. And I went upstairs, and this is a man who's deaf in his left ear and was sleeping on his good ear. And typically when that's happening, if the phone rings by his bed or even the alarm goes off in the morning, he never hears it. I have to wake him up. So that was strange.
So how did he hear the sound?
I know. With him, once he can turn that good ear, he said he heard the sound and thought also that it was television. And so he went upstairs to find that our television was not on. It was a strange experience at 3 a.m. in the morning. I didn't know anything about all this sound stuff around the world at the time till December, when my nephew from California, who I had just hooked up with on Facebook like a week before, posted after, I think it was December 1st, a little after 1 o'clock in the morning, and he woke up to high winds, went outside and heard these strange sounds, trumpet sounds in the night. He did not record, and he posted on Facebook the next morning, and a bunch of his friends said, oh, I heard that too. They're young. He's like 23 years old, and he linked to the Kiev video, and so that really caught my attention. The trumpet sounds that people have been experiencing in different places, and he linked it to this Kiev video that so many people have seen. And that was my first time to see that. And then in that process, as YouTube does, it had made other suggestions, including this video from Norway. And that's when I found something that really was very similar to to what I experienced that night. My husband agreed. It sounded a lot like what he thought he heard as well. But the point that it reminded me of it was about 34 seconds in, and it kind of almost sounds like muffled voices. And I would love an explanation, like I'm sure everybody would.
Let me ask you something, Maura. When I hear that you and your husband both went upstairs thinking that the TV was left on or had come on, what comes into my mind is a sound of voices talking, but that neither you nor your husband could make words out of what sounded like television people talking.
Yeah, I would say that that is definitely true, because that night when I did go outside, I kept trying to figure it out, and it did have that quality, but yet I never heard any particular words or kind of an old television sound.
It's possible that whatever these sounds are is coming to us from something that is directing old television programs at us, but in a garbled fashion, or are trying to get our attention with various sounds that might make humans pay attention for reasons that are unknown.
That's an interesting thought. I really hadn't thought of. Yeah, that's like projecting things back at us that they think might make some sense, or at least have people react. And then I listened to some of the other ones from different places, and that where we went really, that's when I went to my husband. I said, listen to this. Does this remind you at all of that? And he agreed that it somewhat did for him.
So, George, we've heard a few ranges of some of the sounds. And what if some of the strange sounds around the world over the last year were part of an American government test of what some have called voice of God weapons? It was around the time of 9/11, there were rumors that the Defense Department wanted to try directing sound waves into the minds of Middle East terrorists as the voice of Allah that would order terrorists to put down their suicide belts. Wired.com published a July 6, 2008 article entitled, quote, "The Microwave Scream Inside Your Skull," close quote, which described the U.S. Army's effort to develop a non-lethal microwave weapon that would create sounds inside human heads. That project was called Medusa, an acronym for Mob Excess Deterrent using silent audio. A beam of microwaves would be turned into sound as the waves interacted with the target's head. Nobody else can hear the microwave sound unless they are in the beam as well. But the shock to the target's skull was more likely to make Medusa a death ray, and allegedly that project was dropped. However, last week, Wired.com writer Noah Schachman described a brand new DARPA, quote, magic plan, battlefield illusions to mess with enemy minds, close quote. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the U.S. Department of Defense, responsible for the development of new military technology. Schachman reported that on February 13th this year, quote, DARPA introduced a new $4 million investigation into technologies that will manage the adversary's sensory perception in order to confuse, delay, inhibit, or misdirect his actions, close quote. The goal of battlefield illusion, electro-optical warfare, is to find ways to, quote, jam laser-based communications and sensor systems, just like today's radio frequency jammers mess with cell phones and radars, close quote. Now, I am bringing this up.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that government has experimented on its own people.
Well, and if they wanted to get some kind of weird global test in coming up into this year that is so charged with the mythology of the end of the 5,125 year stone Mayan cycle, I started to say it's not really the end of the calendar, it's the end of a cycle.
A cycle.
And that when you end one cycle, it begins a new cycle. And in all of this, the very fact that there are so many different sounds, one of the puzzles from the very beginning, I've listened to maybe 40 of these videos now, you get the sense from what people say and talking with Will Smith and Cindy Smith and to Maura Dingman, the fact that they are feeling like they're surrounded by sound that other people should be hearing or waking up to.
It's got to drive them nuts.
Well, and in the daytime, when Cindy Smith was looking around and she doesn't see people, and the emailers say, it seemed like that the sound was loud enough around me that other people in other houses should be running out. And at least Will Smith in Olive Branch, Mississippi, saw a car stop near where he was delivering newspapers. And they did roll down the window, which means in that case, and that's a piece of evidence,
I heard something.
It wasn't just in Will's head, it was stopped a car. And when you go to the extraordinary 11 minutes and 24 seconds of the Kiev, Ukraine, which I think it would be valuable for anybody interested in this to listen to the entire 11 minutes and 24 seconds of the Kiev, Ukraine that was recorded by a woman around the 5th floor of an apartment building on August 11th, 2011, and listen to it from beginning to end. And I have all of it at earthfiles.com in my report that's there tonight. Well, when you realize that the 11 minutes and 24 seconds was recorded and uploaded at some point back in 2011, nobody knew anything about it, right? Then you start getting emails that people were describing horn-like sounds in January, but no one had ever heard the Kiev recording. The people who have emailed me, they had not heard that recording, but they are describing the sounds of trumpets or horns. So I am trying to step back from this and say something extraordinary is happening with sound, and in some cases, the sound seems to be isolated or focused, either on the geography or the person.
Are the people calling law enforcement reporting this?
I believe that the woman in Oregon, another one of those videotapes that has the Kiev-like horn sound in it, many of them do have variations on it. And let me stop people right now who are saying, well, it's because somebody dubbed in the Kiev.
Right, right.
No, I'm sorry. Lots of these videos that have these themes, which includes why I included Germany and the Dunkirk, New York. They are strange variations, but they are not the Kiev track.
We're going to talk more with Linda Moulton now about this strange situation, including, of course, what's been released on YouTube. Linda's next with more on Coast to Coast AM. And, you know, as you said, Linda, these sounds are popping up all over YouTube, and they've been there for some time, haven't they?
Since the March 11th is the first one that I have been able to find, and we are now in March or February, going soon into March,
almost
so
a year.
But no one was listening to these sounds or talking about them until the montages, the collections, were put together in January, and that's when theories about what was causing these sounds began to grow like mushrooms, just like what was happening on YouTube. And some of those explanations included things like, well, rocks might be sliding against rocks underground in seismic events, or atmospheric changes caused by increased solar activity interacting with Earth's magnetic fields. And in that last category, at the end of January on the 28th, an alleged Azerbaijan geophysicist named Elchin Khalilov released a web article entitled, quote, "Strange Sounds in Sky Explained by Scientists," close quote. Why he used scientists plural in his title, since he is the lone author, is as puzzling as his alleged hypothesis that the strange global sounds are produced by, quote, acoustic gravity waves caused by powerful solar flares and plasma emissions from the sun as solar activity began to rise sharply since early 2011, close quote. So I contacted David Hathaway, PhD, solar physicist at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Dr. Hathaway has been predicting for the past year that the 2013 solar maximum will be the weakest in nearly a century. His colleagues at the National Solar Observatory in Tucson, Arizona, have also presented research data that sunspot magnetic fields are weakening by about 50 Gauss per year. Their conclusion is that sunspots could completely vanish around 2015, beginning a Maunder minimum cycle not seen for 300 years since 1715. All this means that contrary to the Elchin-Khaliloff Webb paper, there is nothing especially strong about solar cycle 24 as it moves toward maximum a year from now in the summer of 2013. I began my interview with Dr. Hathaway by playing for him some of the Norway old TV sounds and then the Kiev, Ukraine horn-like sounds. And then I read the opening sentences of Mr. Khaliloff's web article that is supposed to explain how the sounds might be produced by solar plasmas and magnetic field interactions. But Dr. Hathaway disagrees. Here now is my interview after playing sounds for NASA solar physicist David Hathaway.
Dr. Hathaway, I'm quoting from Strange Sounds in Sky Explained by Scientists by Mr. Khaliloff on January 28, 2012. The article begins, quote, "We have analyzed records of these sounds and found that most of their spectrum lies within the infrasound range, not audible to humans. What people hear is only a small fraction of the actual power of these sounds. They are low-frequency acoustic emissions in the range between 20 and 100 hertz, modulated by ultra-low infrasonic waves from 0.1 to 15 hertz. In geophysics, they are called acoustic gravity waves. They are formed in the upper atmosphere at the atmosphere-ionosphere boundary in particular." Now, that's his lead, and that these low-frequency acoustic emissions and the acoustic gravity waves that they produce are what he is saying is the essence of these sounds. What is your comment, Dr. Hathaway?
The description that you read me where we call these acoustic gravity waves, it sounded like he was just spouting scientific terms without any real attribution as to this is where the noise is coming from. I'm unaware of any significant sounds coming from aurorae. People in Alaska that have been studying aurorae for decades, I'm sure would have heard them and would have set up microphones in an array so you can pinpoint where is the sound coming from, what is its frequencies that are being produced. Certainly the sound that I heard, that was very much in the audible range. You hear all the city sounds in this
strange horn-like.
Yeah, horn-like, I think is the correct description, but I really doubt that solar activity producing it. This is a small sunspot cycle. We've had huge sunspot cycles prior to this, so I strongly suspect that this is not the case.
And isn't it true that ultra-low infrasonic is usually what might be associated with solar plasmas interacting with magnetic fields?
Yeah, big things make low sound.
Yeah.
So it's called infrasound because it's below the 20 hertz that human ears can hear. As far as solar activity and its effect on the Earth, certainly it produces the ionosphere, produces aurorae, produces a lot of things. If that activity was producing sounds like this, scientists would have been quick to jump on it. We're curious folks, We've been studying solar activity and aurorae in the ionosphere for a long time now, and I think it sounds like this, if they were associated with it, I'm sure we would have been on top of it a long time ago.
Could you explain what happens on the sun, what leaves the sun, what interacts with Earth's magnetic fields that produces aurora?
The particles that produce aurora come from within the Earth's magnetic field, but they are energized and ultimately produced by disturbances hitting the Earth's magnetic field, and those disturbances come from the sun. So if we start at the sun, we have flares on the surface of the sun that are produced by twisted magnetic fields in sunspots that have blast material off of the sun, 1 billion tons of matter moving at 1 million miles an hour in what we call a coronal mass ejection. And so this is a cloud of ionized matter with embedded magnetic fields that's thrown off of the sun through the solar system, and when they're thrown at Earth, coronal mass ejection that's launched from a position that's near the center of the sun as we view it, that coronal mass ejection goes through the solar system in a matter of a couple days, reaches the Earth, and that's where the electrons that produce the aurora come from. They spin around magnetic field lines, and as they come into the atmosphere, they strike nitrogen and oxygen that's in our atmosphere, and if it's high enough up where they hit, they produce the colors. Reds produce real high, and you can often see red aurorae at fairly low latitudes during a big storm.
Why are they high?
Because of the path that the magnetic field lines take. For the electrons to get down low into the atmosphere, it's difficult at lower latitudes just because the magnetic field lines, instead of coming into the atmosphere, are more or less moving along it. They're moving at an angle more parallel to the surface of the Earth instead of coming in through the atmosphere.
Now, some of the most spectacular aurorae photographs, they have had beautiful curves to them. Are we seeing the curves of the magnetic fields?
Yeah, very much so. It's what the electrons streaming down. And so depending upon which field lines they'll come down, they're often like curtains. And the one or two I've seen, they look like curtains that are continually moving around, and it's because the electrons are coming down on different magnetic field lines as they stream into the atmosphere.
So is it fair for me as a reporter to say that acoustic gravity waves could not explain the horn-like sounds in the Kiev, Ukraine video or the strange up-and-down white noise in the Norway video?
It's highly unlikely. The acoustic waves and the gravity waves that are produced within the Earth's atmosphere are produced by atmospheric phenomena. As a solar and space scientist, I'm more concerned about trying to attribute those noises to solar activity. That's where I think they're really off on the wrong foot there. Certainly something is making those noises. I'm just incredulous about the possibility that it's solar activity that's producing them.
So in all of your work as a solar physicist, you have never heard of anyone anywhere on the planet hearing or recording sounds from plasmas interacting with the Earth's magnetic fields?
Actual acoustic sounds, I don't know of any scientific studies that say there was this aurora and we detected these sounds from that aurora. Certainly there are lots of disturbances that are produced by aurora, by lightning in the Earth's atmosphere and so forth. Lightning, of course, we hear thunder, so there's no doubt that lightning produces sound. But it also produces disturbances along these magnetic field lines that you can hear via radio. Old AM and certainly in shortwave radio transmissions, you can hear at radio frequencies these disturbances moving around in the Earth's magnetic field.
And it sounds like a lot of static, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like static, but the interesting one are what are called Whistler modes. As the magnetic field lines go into the north and south pole, they get closer and closer together and they get stronger, and it makes the electrons that are moving along those field lines produce radio waves at different frequencies. And so what you can hear when you're listening to a radio, you'll often hear what are called Whistler modes. It'll sound like someone whistling but with a pitch change. Things like that. So there's Whistler modes, there's roaring that sounds like noise. There's a lot of noise that you hear at radio frequencies that does come from these electrons moving around in the Earth's magnetic field.
Is there anything that is going on with the sun and this solar system that might be different now in 2011 to 2012 than has ever been between the sun and the solar system before? Is there any anomaly that you all have even had curiosity about?
Not that I can think of. Nothing. Everything's pretty much as it was.
So we truly have a mystery about what would be producing horn-like sounds and strange white noise, staticky, loud sounds around the world in just the last year. What if it is a real phenomenon? Others, white noise, are being generated at certain latitudes and longitudes for reasons unknown.
Then it would be really interesting.
That's why I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Exactly. What is the current status, from your point of view, of the activity of the sun and the relationship to that controversial question, will this be a strong solar max or a weak one?
We are approaching maximum. I still suspect and predicting that maximum will be about the middle of next year, 2013, and that it's going to be a smaller than average cycle.
You still think that?
I still do.
So why are we getting all of these strong solar flares that are producing what some people who live in the Arctic and Norway and that area say are the most astounding aurora they've ever seen?
I haven't heard that. Certainly there's been some spectacular aurorae, but the number of flares, the number of aurorae is totally in line with the size of the cycle as we see it. Since we had this long lull of little activity, we've gotten very excited when the sun does produce things. And forget that 10, 12 years ago, we were seeing very much the same sort of activity.
And it was about a decade ago that we were in solar max that had a lot of big flares. Well, 2 weeks ago, NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center released its monthly update of the ongoing solar cycle 24 sunspot activity that was covering January of 2012. And just like the month before in December, the solar sunspot numbers plunged to a low that has not been seen since March of 2011. And over the past year, the sun's activity has fluctuated from strong to weak at least 4 times since the fall of 2010. To have such low sunspot activity now, as maximum is supposed to be revving up, means that Dr. Hathaway's prediction is holding up, that the solar cycle 24 maximum next summer of 2013 could be the weakest in nearly a century. And so you put all this together, and it makes me wonder what in the world provoked that Kaliloff-Webb paper that was not based in any physics associated with the known sun and the known magnetic fields interaction now whatsoever. And it also stresses for me as a reporter that we might be in 2012, all of us, having to do overtime work separating the wheat from the chaff. And in this case, the chaff could be everything from government projects that are deliberately trying to do tests in this sort of mythological year of 2012 that some people think will be apocalyptic and others think will just be another year that transitions to 2013, with that being a solar max year, but perhaps a very weak solar max, interestingly enough, going in perhaps, if some of these other physics projections are correct, into a Maunder minimum by 2015 in which there would be no sunspots on the sun for some foreseeable future. And who knows what that would do. But you take all of this and look at all of the different possibilities out there, from we'll call them formal counterintelligence tests, to people who just want to pull pranks, to something truly
Bizarre.
unusual
Yep.
and highly strange happening in the unseen, perhaps related to some sort of interaction with the big cosmic box and our small solar system, and that we are truly in a year where everybody, all of us, we have to be helping each other do reality checks on what are facts and separate them from forces that may be trying to manipulate human minds for reasons unknown, while at the same time we can't be throwing out the truly mysterious. And I hope, George, as we go through 2012, that what I'm doing with my Earth Files news reports on Coast and at earthfiles.com, that people will come to Earth Files and listen to the Earth Files news on Coast as an effort to try to separate out what is truly happening. And right now, I can say tonight, I have too many emails from too many people that are all over the United States and the world who are reporting. They're baffled. There's no question that they are baffled.
And they are hearing something.
And
right?
they are hearing something, but why isn't the whole planet? Why aren't whole cities? Why aren't whole neighborhoods? That, to me, makes that whole DARPA research project so interesting. What could be putting a carrier wave on microwaves and perhaps aiming them in a tight focus? That's something for us all to learn a lot more about. And to remember that Will Smith, delivering his newspapers in Olive Branch, Mississippi, a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee, that when that sound filled the air, the hair on his head, the hair on his arms started rising. That is an electrostatic effect. It means that there is something that is charged in the atmosphere, was charged around Will Smith. It made him feel eerie, and it means that some true electrostatic physical phenomena was occurring around him when he heard the horn-like sound.
I know the first Monday of every month at 11 o'clock in St. Louis, Linda, they play sirens for tornado drills, basically. But, I mean, clearly you can hear that. But my point, it's so eerie when you hear these sounds throughout the area, and you just don't know exactly where they're coming from.
And if you listen to that Kiev, Ukraine, in all of its 11 minutes and 24 seconds, and realize that variations on that sound have been being heard everywhere from the United States, Canada, Germany, all over, and Australia, then what in the world would be the motive? That really intrigues me.
Dolphins. I love them. Linda talks about them next on Coast to Coast AM. Well, next hour, we call it Conversations with Linda. That's right. We take your phone calls, questions for her. Perhaps you're a whistleblower and you've got some story ideas and tips. Many of our stories that we've had with Linda have come from you. We'll do that next hour on Coast to Coast AM. Linda, every time I see a story about a dolphin dying or beaching itself, it just drives me crazy.
I know. I love them so much. And of all of the dolphins, this one that has been coming into Cape Cod in unprecedented numbers and dying in unprecedented numbers over 4 weeks, it started January 12th, and the last stranding of 11 was the 14th, for a total of 179 in the Cape Cod area between Barnstable and Wellfleet, of which 108 died.
Jeez.
And these are all common dolphins. And I'll give you just a little background because they are so beautiful. There are now thought to be perhaps 3 species, one that has a short beak, one that has a long beak, and one that is in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean that has an extremely long and thin beak. And these are the dolphins that have the beautiful bodies where the back is dark, the belly is white, and then along each side it is like a kind of long hourglass in which the upper part of the hourglass can be beige, yellow, or gold, and the back of the hourglass is this light gray. I have some beautiful photographs at Earth Files of them, and then some sad and tragic ones of the people that have been trying to save their lives. The common dolphins like deep, warmer waters between about 40 degrees north and 50 degrees south.
That was Flipper was one of those, right?
I think Flipper was a bottlenose dolphin.
Bottlenose. Okay.
Yeah. These are the ones you see in all the old Greek art, are the common dolphin. And the irony is they're called common dolphin because they have such a long history on the earth, but there is so little known about them because they like to stay out in deep, warm water. They have know that these animals will dive down 700 feet going after food, and that they live in large social groups of maybe 100 or 1,000. And the common dolphins were abundant in the Mediterranean Sea until the 1960s. And then their population began to seriously decline, perhaps from toxins, industrial pollution, fishing nets, climate change, and other human assaults on the marine environment. In the United States, common dolphins are a protected species. Now, the common dolphin navigates and finds its food by making burst pulses, which is the clicking sound that travels quickly through the water, and the sound is bounced back from the objects in front of the dolphin into the dolphin's head and its lower jaw that has a kind of fatty tissue specially made to process the returns of these clicking sounds, similar to human radar or sonar. The dolphin echolocation clicks are some of the loudest sounds made by all marine animals. And beginning on January 12th, a month ago, and up to February 14th, 179 of these beautiful common dolphins came into that hook at Cape Cod, and they stranded, and then they re-stranded, and 108 died over that period of time. And the reasons for the persistent common dolphin strandings are still unclear as I am speaking tonight. Rescue teams from the International Fund for Animal Welfare, also known as IFA in Yarmouthport, Massachusetts, tried to save as many of the common dolphins as possible as they kept persisting to strand, restrand, and die between Barnstable and Wellfleet. IFA contacted the United States Navy about possible underwater sound interference from military projects off Cape Cod, but the Navy said it was not conducting any exercises or other projects that might have interfered with the common dolphin, let's say its echolocation, the process. Maybe there was interference, and maybe that's what threw off their navigation. No one knows. One marine biologist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's National Marine Fisheries Service is Trevor Spradlin. He has studied dolphins and marine mammals for 23 years. After undergraduate work in marine biology at Boston University in 1991, Trevor began working for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in Cape Cod. His focus was marine mammal behavior and the bioacoustics lab research. Then, in 1994, he took a position at NOAA in the Marine Mammal Health and Stranding Response Program in Silver Spring, Maryland. I talked with him last week after 11 common dolphins stranded in Cape Cod on February 14th. And Trevor told me that with 179 strands, 108 deaths, quote, "This is an unprecedented number in such a short time," close quote. Here now is Trevor Spradlin from NOAA Fisheries.
This is a very perplexing event. We don't know why it's been persisting for the past 4 weeks. What is different about this event is the longevity of it and certainly the numbers. We are perplexed by the large volume of animals that we're seeing, but common dolphins, we do know, live in very large groups, and when they're off in deep water, they can form huge groups of hundreds of animals. We don't know very much about the social dynamics of common dolphins, but we're slowly learning. One of the important things that IFA has been able to accomplish is they've been able to tag animals that they've been able to release back into the deep water. And so they're able to track the movements of these surviving animals. Some of these animals that IFA has released, they've been already tracked off the coast of Maine. So they're moving large distances in very short amount of time.
Is it fair to say that this is an unprecedented stranding event in the history of common dolphin strandings?
Definitely. Our colleagues have not seen something at this scale before. These animals seem to be healthy because there is no sign of disease. These animals do not appear to be sick. It's very strange, for sure. Some have restranded again, so we're looking at that.
Restranding means that these are dolphins that have come into Cape Cod. They've been alive. People have tried to get them back out into deep ocean, but they've ended up, because they have them tagged, they know it's the same dolphin, ends up back in Cape Cod.
Exactly.
And that goes to the question of what would be disorienting the common dolphin that normally spends its life out 20 to 30 miles offshore in deep waters. What could make it change twice coming into the Cape Cod hook?
That's a great question. We don't know the answer to that yet. Those animals that restrand are already compromised by the initial stranding event. So some of them may still be in shock. They may still not have recovered from that initial stranding. So why the animals are restranding could be multiple reasons. It could be any myriad of factors. They could be chasing prey, and their prey may be coming inland, and they may be just following their prey. So we are going to be looking at the movement patterns of their prey species and seeing if we can see a pattern there. They could be responding to different shifts in water temperature or currents. We're looking at that as well. The folks on the ground are trying to get to these animals as fast as possible just because of the treacherous nature of the habitat there. These animals are being found in remote parts of the Cape. Sometimes these animals have been stranded for quite a while before the rescue team has been able to find them. So if the team is able to get to the animals immediately before they strand, they have a higher probability of survival. If the animals have been on the ground and out of water for an extended period of time, their prognosis for survival is less. Mm-hmm. But they try to make sure that they release as many animals as possible. Some of these restranders are most likely animals that were compromised more than the healthier ones.
Does restranding happen often?
If the animals are showing signs of disease or illness, then restranding would not be unexpected. But if animals are not showing any signs of disease or have not been exposed to pollution or have not been exposed to sounds that disorient them, then we wouldn't expect them to necessarily restrand unless they've experienced some kind of initial trauma from the first stranding event.
But to date, as we're talking on February 17, 2012, there's nothing in the necropsies done so far on some of the dead, stranded common dolphins in Cape Cod as a specific cause of the stranding and the deaths?
That is correct. These dolphins, when the team is able to handle them, they appear healthy. The live animals, if they are able to get them on the ocean side of the Cape and put them back into deep water, they seem to be thriving and they seem to be able to survive. The animals that have died have shown no indication of being ill. When they die, it's most likely a result of shock to being out of the water. What's happening is that these animals are stranding on the bay side of Cape Cod. They are experiencing very extreme shifts in the tide. They find themselves high and dry, and particularly for dolphins, they need to be in water. When they are on land, unfortunately, they succumb to gravity. Their bodies are not designed to withhold their weight, so they need to be in water to have that kind of buoyancy. So when they are on land, it's very detrimental for them, and that's why it's always important to try to get to stranded live animals as fast as possible so that we can try to get them back in the deeper water and have them float and hopefully stabilize. This particular species, common dolphin, is a pelagic deep water species. They are not used to being in shallow waters at all. And one of the predominant theories here is that they are unable to navigate successfully in these very treacherous, shallow areas around the inside of the Cape.
Is it possible that the U.S. Navy could be conducting some kind of underwater exercises that they are not admitting that could interfere with the sonar echolocation of the common dolphins?
Well, we don't think so because we have been coordinating with the Navy and asking them to provide us information. And They've told us that they're not doing anything out there, and if they were, we would expect to see other species, not just common dolphins, responding to that. We don't see any evidence of noise or acoustic trauma on these animals. They seem to be healthy. They don't seem to be showing any signs of trauma. So it's really perplexing what is going on here.
Could you explain how dolphins use magnetic fields for their orientation and what magnetic anomalies can do to them and how?
Well, the science is still very much ongoing with respect to that. I'm not aware of any definitive work that's been done. I mean, there's mostly just theories about the influence of geomagnetic forces on their ability to navigate. What we do know is that dolphins use a lot of acoustics to find their way through the environment. Particularly, common dolphins use echolocation, biological sonar, which they use sound to bounce off objects and to bounce off the seafloor, and that we believe is one of the primary ways that they are able to navigate.
So what might interfere with their echolocation, cause disorientation, and have them end up in the Cape Cod hook?
We don't really know. We will be looking at whether there have been any sounds going on, but we have no evidence to suggest that there are any human-caused sounds, no shipping noise or military noise that has been causing this. But because we're not seeing any immediate signs of illness, disease, pollution, toxicity, we're seeing no overarching health issues with these animals. It's a real mystery why this is happening.
Jeez, another baffling story, Linda.
It is. It truly is. And today I got an update from IFA in Massachusetts. They've completed 9 dolphin necropsies in which the time of death was known, which is important, and several other necropsy results are pending. So far, the necropsy results do not, quote, suggest any one cause for this stranding event. One animal showed gross signs of liver disease. Many otherwise healthy animals showed only signs of stress related to the stranding event itself. Furthermore, there is no gross evidence suggesting that acoustic trauma is a cause for this stranding event, close quote. Searching for viruses and other pathogens can cost a lot of money, in the thousands of dollars, and IFA is seeking more funding for more analysis. 3 days before the large stranding of the 11 common dolphins in Cape Cod on Valentine's Day, on Saturday, February 11th, a 3-year-old body of a female orca killer whale washed up north of Long Beach, Washington. The orca are toothed whales in the oceanic dolphin family, and they are an endangered species. So the loss of this female, known to Cascadia research scientists as L112 from the L pod, is very serious. And one of the Orca Network people, Susan Berta, said, quote, to lose a 3-year-old is very sad, but especially when it's a female and especially from L pod. This is pretty devastating in a community of marine animals that is so small in numbers, close quote. And right now, the total number of the monitored orca pods on the West Coast, known as K, L, and J, are only 88 now. The good news is, as of today, February 23rd going into the 24th, it appears that the last stranding was that February 14th of the 11. They haven't had, between the 14th and this tonight, they haven't had more. They're holding their breath. They're hoping that the long 4 weeks of sustained stranding there is over, even if they don't know what in the world has happened. And this same week, at the annual American Association for the Advancement of Science annual meeting in Vancouver, BC, Canada, Professor Lori Marino, PhD, she's in the Neuroscience and Behavioral Biology Department at Atlanta's Emory University. She presented a Declaration of Rights for Cetaceans, whales, and dolphins. Professor Marino said, based on her own research, that, quote, science has shown us that cetaceans have most, if not all, the characteristics the humans have. including intelligence, self-awareness, autonomy, and social complexity. Their basic needs are very much like humans: to be able to stay alive, to not be confined, to make choices in travel, and perhaps foremost, to engage in social interaction, close quote. Dolphin brain power is second only to humans on this planet. Dolphins use tools to catch fish. They understand words. They speak in different dialects in different locations. They feed their sick pod mates, and they grieve in sadness when calves die. Professor Marino told the AAAS scientists, quote, "If these cetacean animals are self-aware, have specific cultures, stay with the same pod their whole life, and are incredibly intelligent and social, then no tank will ever be able to give them the kind of life they have in the ocean," close quote. Professor Marino and her colleague Annalise Sorg, president of the Coalition for No Whales in Captivity, they want to prevent whales and dolphins from being captured for aquariums or caught for food, and plan to take their Declaration of Rights for cetaceans to the United Nations. That, to me, is a small light at the end of the tunnel of what humans are doing to Earth life.
All these things going on. Linda, we're going to take phone calls with you next hour, conversations with Linda. Did you see that story where a Japanese firm wants to build a space elevator by 2050?
Yes, and I would like to talk with some physicists about whether it's feasible.
That would be, it's kind of weird to think of it. It's a long cable, right, that goes up into space.
I saw the illustrations, and I read probably what you read, but I had 1,000 questions running through my mind about, is this really feasible, and how would it work? So that is something I'll get into and maybe do a report about.
Yeah, that would be strange. What would happen, for example, if a plane came by and clipped it? You know?
Yeah, how would you protect from the ground to up toward the moon or to the moon?
Very strange. Well, we're going to take a lot of calls already. People are calling. They might have many questions or stories about these strange hums all over the place. That could be just about anything. We'll talk about that too, Linda, when we come back. Let's speculate a little bit. I mean, are they building bunkers underneath the old planet? Who knows? Are they coming from extraterrestrial sources? Are they some kind of death ray or some kind of equipment that might be tested on us? Is it biblical? We'll be back in a moment with your calls and Linda Moulton Howe on Coast to Coast AM.